Okay, guys. So I'm just going to do a kind of a safety, some do's and don'ts and so on, or some good practices for plumbing. And I'll start off saying, first thing to always remember, the smart and safe way always starts with thinking about your next steps in plumbing. So taking a moment to consider what might be in the pipe, or whether you need to shut off the water before doing whatever may seem like a simple task, or whatever could turn into a disaster, obviously, if you don't. So thinking about what's in the pipe. So what does that mean? You have a backed up drain. What do you think's in the pipe?
Sewage.
And there's usually sewage in there, right? I mean, somewhere along the line. You can have gray water for through your kitchen sink, or if you're down further, there can be waste, human waste. So always think about what you're doing before you even get there. So thinking about a drain, before separating drain parts or removing a clean out, stop and ask yourself, is it possible that the contents of the pipe will drain in your direction? Because drains are not normally under pressure, but a clog in a drain can build significant pressure. So I'm not sure how many of you guys have ever done that, but due to gravity and the weight behind the clog, there's many plumbers have had horror stories when they open up a clean out in a basement, or something to that effect, where it has that back pressure that they didn't realize it had. All of a sudden you're kind of creating like a fire hose effect, and you open it up and it just starts spraying all over at you. So who wants sewage all over them, right? So think about it first. Think about the layout of the house. When you have something that's lower, and you have a two-story, for an example, and you're downstairs, the clog's somewhere up higher than ground level, there's a lot of pressure that can build up. You open up the sewer and you're going to have a bath or a shower, or whatever you want to call it. So let's talk about potable water, shutting off the water. If there's any chance that your work will involve a water supply, shut off the water to be safe. Sometimes what looks like a decorative cap or a knob actually holds back pressurized water. You don't want to have to search the whole household when you're in a panic to shut off the water, like finding out where the shut-off valve is. So it's always safer, even if you're messing with the supply line, you don't think, for an example, the angle stop may not be in good condition. It may look good, but as soon as you touch it, bam, you got water going everywhere. So a lot of the plastic ones have, because they're made of plastic and cheap plastic and made in other places throughout the world, not the U.S. necessarily, sometimes in the U.S., but because of all the chemicals in the water, chlorine, chloramines, and everything else, those things can become brittle over time. They can freeze up. You just give it a little bit of muscle turn on it, and then next thing you know, you're popping one off. So then you got to run and find out the shut off. So it's always better to shut it off first. Turn turn the faucet on that you're on to kind of drain out most of the water, so you don't end up having a big flood. The last thing you want to do is get into someone's house and flood them out, right? So always think ahead of time on that. Be informed. Check all pertinent local building and plumbing codes before starting any kind of significant plumbing project. Know what work you can do yourself and what work requires somebody that's obviously has more experience. And obviously get permits whenever you need to. Protecting your eyes. So wearing safety goggles when you're doing any kind of plumbing work, especially something that could potentially damage your eyes, such as snaking drains, using a drill, a reciprocating saw, hammering, or even working under a sink while looking up can pose a safety hazard for your eyes. Also be aware of the possibilities of contaminants like sewage, drain gunk splashing into your eyes. Protecting your hands, making sure you wear protective gloves to protect your hands. Hands come into contact with many different materials and chemicals when doing plumbing projects, and using gloves is an easy way to prevent injuries. When using a drain machine or of any sort, it's a good idea to wear latex gloves under your leather gloves to protect you not only from germs, but other things that can be found in drains that you don't want touching your hands. Protect your lungs. Use a face mask when necessary to protect your lungs. When your project involves sawing, sanding, make sure you use any kind of, make sure you take the extra precaution using a disposable face mask to prevent inhalation of dust particles. Practice tool safety. Exercise caution when using power tools and follow the manufacturer's recommendation for use. Drilling large holes for pipes with a powerful drill is a common hazard for plumbing work. So make sure that the drill bit or cutter will not bind during the operation. So I don't know how many of you guys have used old drill bits and old, tools, cutters, whatever the case may be. That's where you get hurt. So make sure you keep your tools in good condition and your bits and so on are sharp, and you don't have to worry about that. Make sure you use heat shield and have water or a fire extinguisher whenever you're soldering or brazing. And make sure you read labels for chemicals and follow the recommendations at all times, making sure that you're just being cautious of what you're putting on your skin. So again, wearing gloves when you need to wear gloves and things like that, or masks when you have something that you're inhaling that could be dangerous as well. Plumbing can be deceptively simple. That is, it can seem less complicated than it really is. So the main rule of thumb is don't rush into things. Think through your project and make sure you plan your work before you start pulling pipes and fixtures apart. Building codes are put in place for a reason, to protect you and everyone in the household. So make sure you follow them, and if you ever have a question, make sure you ask or do your research prior to getting into a big job. Because the last thing we want to do is contaminate somebody's water supply or something silly like that. So how can you contaminate someone's water supply, Nick?
Basically, a direct connection between waste and water.
Okay. What's another way?
Like no air gap, basically, say that.
Okay.
Grazing or soldering with the wrong materials.
All right. What do we use to solder with that could be dangerous to our customers?
Silfos.
What's that?
Silfos.
Okay. So how can that hurt somebody?
Because what's inside of it, it's not used for potable water.
Okay. All right. So basically know your chemicals that you're using. Make sure that you're doing what is necessary to keep everything safe for your clients. Another thing that we work with on a regular basis is natural gas, sometimes propane and so on, right? So make sure that if you smell gas, stop right away. Make sure that everything is turned off. If you have to call the gas company, if that's the case. If you have to open windows to air things out, the last thing you want to do is have someone's animals or children or elderly, being put at risk because of a gas leak that we could have caused, right? By working on something and not doing it properly. Make sure you don't cut blindly before cutting or drilling into a wall. Make sure you know what's behind the surface, or of course, always proceed with extreme caution when you're not sure. All the cavities in walls can hide plumbing pipes, electrical wires, and all kinds of other things, ductwork, that we don't want to drill into. So, and misuse of tools or equipment for their intended purposes also can cause injury, and poorly maintained tools and equipment can be safety hazards. So make sure you check your equipment prior to using them. Anybody have any questions on that? It's pretty simple stuff. All right. You got anything, Kevin, you want to bring up? I know we.
Well, I just wanted to mention that if you're opening up a water system and working on the pipes, and one good way to sanitize it, if they have a whole house water treatment system, is to put the water treatment system on bypass and allow the chloramines to flow through the system, and that'll give it a quick sanitation. Otherwise, anything you might enter into will probably get killed by the chloramines anyway.
Right.
But if they do have the whole house, just remember to bypass it for a bit.
Okay, makes sense. That's a good point. Anybody else have any suggestions? I mean, Nick, I know you've been around a long time.
Yeah. Just be very cautious of like how you say if you're in a trench and you're working on say a sewer line, or you back up and there's a water line, you're cutting that out too, or if you're cutting that out of the way to get to the sewer, that you're not, basically getting the two to meet, in any shape or form with your hands, tools, whatever. Another thing is like a tankless pump. When we use the pumps to basically descale it. that pump's only for that pump, you know, or for that, you know, purpose and not anything else. Don't
Right.
throw it in a bucket and you know, mud, you know,
Yep.
for some purpose.
All right, guys, that's it. Appreciate it.